A man drops dead at dinner, his last bite. A salad no one else touched. Welcome to Marple Mysteries. I am your host, Harrington. I'd love to know who's joining us. Comment your location below. Your messages always make these mysteries feel like home. Let's begin. The day started like any other, with Nero Wolfe refusing to leave his chair, Fritz preparing a sauce that was too proud for the pasta it was dressing, and me trying to convince my typewriter not to jam on every third. We were one paragraph into a letter Wolfe had dictated to a Hungarian orchid dealer when the doorbell rang. Normally that would be mine to answer, unless I had lost a limb or Wolfe had taken a bullet, both hypothetical but equally unlikely. Fritz poked his head into the office. She insists, he said, and she brought her own salad. That got my attention. Wolfe's eyebrows twitched, which was basically his version of a spit take. He gestured for me to go deal with it. The woman who stood in our hallway looked like she belonged on the cover of a food magazine. If said magazine was edited by the CIA, late 30s, tall, angular, with high-quality tension in her shoulders and a stainless steel mixing bowl clutched to her chest like it contained plutonium. "I'm Olivia Van," she said. "I have to speak to Mr. Wolfe, privately." "Good for you," I said, giving her the patented Archie Goodwin once-over. "He doesn't usually interview produce, but let's test our luck." I led her in. Wolfe did not rise, of course. He looked at her as if she were a rare but underwhelming cultivar of celery. She didn't wait to be asked. She placed the bowl on Wolfe's desk with the solemnity of a coronation. "I'm being poisoned," she said. Wolfe's eyes barely moved. "I don't consult on marital dramatics or imagined ailments, madam." "It isn't imagined." Her voice didn't rise. "I know it's in the food. I can feel it after. This salad prepared for me by someone I trust screamed at me." I cleared my throat, possibly to stifle a laugh. Wolfe ignored me. "Madam," he said, "you are attributing auditory hallucination to romaine lettuce." "No," she said, unblinking. "I mean figuratively. It screamed because it was wrong, because someone wants to unnerve me. I believe someone is tampering with what I eat, and this," she tapped the bowl, "is my evidence. I need you to find out who and why." Wolfe regarded her in silence for the count of 5. "Then, you brought this here as evidence of sabotage?" "Yeah, and what, madam, do you believe is the motive?" "I'm being removed." A pause. "From something I've spent 10 years building, quietly, strategically, and it's not just sabotage, it's personal." Wolfe reached for the bell on his desk and rang for Fritz. "Take that bowl, refrigerate it. Do not open it, taste it, or otherwise engage with it." "Not yet." Fritz departed with the offending salad like it might explode. Wolfe leaned back and placed the tips of his fingers together. "I will not accept this case," he said. I blinked. "The woman did." "I thought you might say that," she replied. "So I brought this too." She removed a slim manila envelope from her bag and set it beside the spot where the salad had been. I picked it up. Inside were 5 crisp folded bills, each with 3 digits, and a portrait of Benjamin Franklin. Wolfe sighed. "I still decline." She stood. "Then allow me to say one more thing. Someone close to me, a man I trusted, was found unconscious in his home office 3 nights ago. He hasn't woken up. The doctors say it was a seizure. I say it was a warning." Wolfe's eyes opened, just slightly. She met his gaze. He was going to help me confront someone. The next day, he never got the chance. After a long silence, Wolfe closed his eyes. "Archie," he said, "you will retrieve a new notebook. You will interview Miss Van fully in the front room. I will listen from here. Do not interrupt her, and do not eat the salad." That was the moment I knew the case had crept into the brownstone, not with a corpse, but with K. Miss Olivia Van sat on the green damask chair in our front room, like she was used to commanding conference tables and people twice her size. She'd removed her gloves, placed them beside her bag, and crossed her legs in a manner that said, "I've been underestimated before. You won't enjoy it if you do it again." I had my notebook open, pen ready, eyebrows lifted. "All right, Miss Van, let's start at the top," I said. "What is it you think someone's trying to take from you?" "My company," she replied. "Or more precisely, my name." "Your name?" She nodded. "I co-founded Green Muse Foods. Plant-based, organic, trendy without being smug, at least we were. until someone inside decided it'd be better without me. They've started shifting decisions behind my back. Contracts I approved suddenly unapproved. A board meeting moved without notice. Then someone rearranged the tasting samples for our investor pitch. And this, she gestured vaguely in the direction of the kitchen. This is the latest. I get it. You run a high-stakes empire of designer vinaigrette, and somebody's decided you're in the way. She didn't smile. You think I'm paranoid? I think a woman who brings a salad to a detective agency is either paranoid or precise. Sometimes both. I flipped a page. The man who collapsed. What's his name? Dr. Bennett K. A food toxicologist. Quiet, ethical, sharp. I'd hired him quietly to analyze the tasting samples that went wrong last week. He was supposed to send me a summary that night. He never did. His wife found him on the floor of his study. Still unconscious. Yes, still in the ICU. I called the hospital yesterday. They won't confirm much, but it didn't sound hopeful. Wolfe's voice drifted in from the office like a heat wave. Archie, ask her who else had access to those samples before the event. She blinked. I could tell she'd forgotten he was listening. 5 people, she said. My chief operating officer, my head of product development, our PR lead, the executive chef, and my business partner, Eamon Bell. I whistled softly. You trust any of... I used to, she said. Then more quietly, especially Eamon. We spent the next 30 minutes mapping out the cast of characters in her gourmet Greek tragedy. I noted names and roles. Eamon Bell, co-founder, charming, erratic, brilliant with branding, formerly close to Olivia. Recently, less so. Tawny Glade, PR director, photogenic, media savvy, a little too ambitious, has floated the idea of a rebrand without Olivia. Dennis Lake, COO, spreadsheet warrior, risk-averse, often tense in meetings with Olivia. Edivir Bowl, head of product development, ex-restaurant critic, known for her palate and sarcasm. Chef Rigo, culinary genius and diva, once threw a spoon at a board member. Possibly high-functioning, definitely high-maintenance. Everyone had access, she said. They all rotate through the test kitchen. The salad you have was made this morning by my assistant, not someone from the company. And you think they're trying to rattle you, I said, but not kill you. She looked at me cool and level. Not yet. I walked her to the door myself. She left behind a faint scent of lemongrass and litigation. Back in the office, Wolfe's eyes were shut, but I knew better. Well, I said. Pirvio, he replied. There is no poison. Not yet. Only a performance. Something is being staged around this woman, and I wish to know the script. You've decided to take the case. He opened one eye. No, Archie, I have decided to watch. You will do the legwork. Begin with Mr. Bell. Determine if ambition has made him a saboteur or merely a fool. Got it, I said. Should I wear my salad-proof vest? He ignored me and reached for the bell. Fritz, prepare a list of ingredients from the woman's offering. Carefully. I want the full composition before dinner. I stood, reached for my coat and paused in the doorway. You're enjoying this, I said. All this drama over a tossed salad. His lips curled, just faintly. Intelligence, he said, is often betrayed by what people put in their mouth. The problem with suspects is they rarely wear signs around their necks reading, I did it. If they did, I could be home by 5 and Wolfe could be back to his orchids with the serene self-satisfaction of a man who believes most crimes are caused by people who oversee. Instead, I found myself outside the airy, glass-obsessed headquarters of Green Muse Foods, where the lobbies smell like bamboo and the lighting has been scientifically optimized to promote collaboration. I walked in through a door that opened too quietly, gave my name to a receptionist, who looked like she could sell minimalist soy candles on the side, and waited. A woman in rose-colored slacks and a blouse that probably cost more than my suit emerged with a poised smile. You're Mr. Goodwin. I'm Tawny Glade. Public relations. I'd pegged her before she opened her mouth. She led me into a lounge that had furniture I wouldn't trust to sit on, and walls lined with framed New Yorker spread. I noticed a glossy portrait of Olivia Van shaking hands with a smiling man. Sandy-haired, late 30s, movie star teeth. Eamon Bell, I presumed. He looked like the kind of guy who could sell a kale cleanse to a truck stop diner. Tawny folded herself into a chair shaped like a question mark. So, You're investigating. Not officially, I said. I'm just here to gather impressions. Olivia Vans hired us to look into a few irregularities. Irregularities, she repeated, like the word had parsley stuck in its teeth. You're on the PR front line. You probably know if something's rotten behind the quinoa. Her laugh was airy but tight. Green Muse is a culture of innovation and transparency. That said, some people don't always play nice in the sandbox. That hesitation told me more than the next 10 minutes of corporate doublespeak. Dennis is conservative, she said at last. Maybe too conservative. He'd rather keep everything the same even when the market changes. Marcia, brilliant palate, difficult personality. She once refused to approve a flavor profile because she didn't like the chef's shirt. Speaking of chefs, I said, how's Rigo doing? Temperamental, genius, loyal to Olivia. I don't think he'd hurt her, unless she tampered with his plating. Then all bets are off. And Eamon Bell. I watched her closely. Her smile got a notch sharper. Chabernetic, talented. Olivia made the brand, but Eamon gave it a face. They were close once. Now, I think he wants the spotlight for himself. And does he have access to the products before they're tested? Everyone does, she said. That's how it works. Collaborative tasting. We test everything as a group. Nothing's sacred. That seemed to be the company motto. I left her with a polite nod and took the elevator up one floor to meet Eamon Bell himself. His office had a whiteboard covered in flowcharts and catchphrases, and he greeted me like an old friend he hadn't met yet. Archie Goodwin, the man with the sharp suits and sharper questions. Come in. I did. He gestured to a leather chair that was actually comfortable and offered me bottled water with a label I didn't recognize. I hear Olivia's rattled, he said. I'd like to help, but she's always been intense. That's not a crime. Of course not, he said smooth. But paranoia's not innovation either. She's been under strain. The launch, the expansion, the board pressure. It's a lot. You still close? I asked. He looked away. We founded this company in her apartment, surrounded by lentils and legal pads. But lately she's been suspicious about everyone, including me. Any idea who might want her out? Out? He blinked. You think this is a coup? I didn't answer. I let the silence do its job. He leaned back. Marcia's abrasive, but harmless. Rago's neurotic, but fiercely loyal. Dennis? He's tired of Olivia overriding him. Sure, but he's the safest pair of hands here. If I had to guess, I'd say Tawny's the wild card. She's always looking 3 steps ahead. Sometimes I wonder whose image she really wants to shape. I made a mental note. Eamon was either a great ally or a silver-plated snake. Next stop, Marcia Bowl. The office door was ajar and I heard her before I saw her, on a call tearing someone apart for suggesting coconut water in the next product line. Coconut, she snapped, is a texture, not a flavor. If I wanted my mouth to feel like it was lined with wet paper towels, I'd lick the inside of a gym bag. She ended the call, saw me, and didn't bother pretending to be polite. You're the detective? Great. Let's get it over with. She was in her 50s, whip thin, with lipstick like a warning sign and a nose for nonsense. You taste everything that goes through here? I asked. I taste. I test. I veto. I've saved this company from at least 7 disasters disguised as seasonal blend. Ever disagreed with Olivia? Daily. But she listens. Unlike Dennis, who thinks flavor is a data point, and Eamon, who thinks packaging is more important than product. Do you like Olivia? I respect her, she said. She's obsessive, which in this business is practically a virtue. Would you sabotage her? She snorted. Not unless she tried to reintroduce that beat sheer monstrosity. Last on my list was Dennis Lake. His office was gray, functional, and smelled faintly of printer ink. He was a square man in a round world with glasses too big and posture too careful. You want records? He asked. I have records. But you'll need Olivia's written permission. I'm not here for records. I'm here to know if you think Olivia's unstable. He hesitated. No, but she's reactive. That salad thing, classic, Olivia. She doesn't trust process. She trusts instinct. That's dangerous in a scaling company. Any tensions with her lately? She overrode a distribution plan last month. Cost us time and money. The board wasn't happy. And I follow the data, he said. I don't have time for paranoia. I finished my round and stepped back into the hallway, where the lobby hummed with muted enthusiasm, and the future was being branded one sprout at a time. I made a quick call to Saul Panzer to background the players, just in case, and headed back to the brownstone with my notebook filled, my suspicion warmed up and my stomach reminding me I'd skipped lunch. Inside, Wolfe was in the plant room, but his voice drifted through the half-open door as I entered the office. "Well?" he asked. I tossed the notebook onto his desk. "They all have reason," I said, "and they all sound innocent. Too innocent. Eamon's slick, Tawny's calculate, Marcia's sharp, Dennis is dry toast, and Rigo, well, I haven't gotten to Rigo yet." "You will," Wolfe said. "Tomorrow. For now, tell Fritz I will dine upstairs. I require thought. What about the salad? I have not tasted it. Nor will I." But Fritz identified 3 ingredients that should not have been in it. Minor elements. Strange. Inconsistent. Poison. "No," he said, "but deliberate. This was not meant to kill, it was meant to signal." He looked at me then full on, "Someone is communicating, and I intend to reply." The next morning started with eggs Florentine and silence. Wolfe devoured his breakfast with the gravity of a man conducting a solo performance of Bach on a fork. He didn't speak until the yolk had been mopped, the plate had been cleared and the world had returned to its proper orbit. "Rigo Martinez," he said. "The chef. Go." He didn't have to explain. The salad had been tampered with. The question was who, and the chef, as guardian of the company's ingredients and rituals, was next on my dance card. So I went. Green Muse's test kitchen was 2 subway stops past reasonable and 1 short Uber ride from pretentious. The space was part lab, part art gallery, gleaming metal, soft lights, basil in planters and people in aprons who looked like they'd studied abroad in flavor. Rigo Martinez was at the far end of the room, building a stack of microgreens like it was Jenga for the elite. He looked up as I approached, frowned and jabbed a spoon into a small metal dish. "Here," he said, "taste this." It wasn't a request. I tasted. Dill. Lemon. Something smoky underneath. "Cured cucumber with sea fennel," he said. "Do you taste how the salt skips over the top? It's unbalanced. Too fast." "I'm more of a pastrami guy," I offered. "Then you're at a disadvantage," he muttered, and turned back to his work. "Olivia Van hired us," I said. "We're looking into the salad she brought yesterday." That stopped. He wiped his hands, then leaned on the counter. "She thinks someone's trying to unnerve her," I added. "You're close to her. Any idea who might want to?" He looked me over. Then slowly, "She's not wrong. Something's shifting here. Small things. Orders re-rated. Recipes adjust. Her decisions reversed without notice. It's happening under her feet. And the salad." He sighed. "I didn't make it. I didn't taste it. But she told me about it. Olivia has a near-perfect palate. If she says something was off, it was off. Anyone else note?" No one said a word. That didn't surprise me. People rarely admit when a game's being played until someone tips the board. "Would you sabotage her?" I asked. He raised an eyebrow. "I make food. I don't play games. Everyone plays games. Yours just come with edible flowers." That earned a slight smile. "I've worked with Olivia since the first product run," he said. "She's demanding. Brutal sometimes. But she's honest. This place is hers whether the board wants to admit it or not." I nodded. "Thanks. One more thing. Do you know Dr. Bennett K?" His face stiffened. "The toxicologist?" "Yes." I referred him to Olivia. "We worked together once on an allergen project. Did you know he collapsed last week? Still hasn't regained consciousness." Now he frowned. "No, I didn't. You think that's a coincidence?" He looked away. "No." Which brought me to Bennett K's brownstone in Park Slope. His wife met me at the door, a pale, tight-lipped woman named Marcia, with a mathematician's hair and a schoolteacher's stare. "He's still in a medically induced coma," she said. "The doctors don't know what triggered it. I understand he was working on something for Olivia Van." "Yes, food sample analysis. He said she was worried someone had tainted a product." "Did he tell you what he found?" She hesitated. "He said something was strange. Too subtle for sabotage, too specific for a mistake. That's the phrase he used. And then he collapsed. That night," she said quietly. "He hadn't even sent her the full report. I found it on his laptop, half written. He'd isolated 3 compounds, All food safe. Nothing illegal, but one was proprietary. Proprietary, a binder used only in one of Green Muse's newer emulsions, used sparingly, and only in the core samples Olivia had already approved. Who else knew he was working with her? Olivia, maybe Rigo. I don't know who else. I left her with a business card and a sense of something tightening. Back at the brownstone, Wolfe listened as I relayed it all: kitchen tension, modified orders, the proprietary compound. He didn't open his eyes until I mentioned Bennett's half-finished report. You have a copy? He asked. No. Marsha's, keeping it close. Can't blame her. But she might be persuaded. Then persuade her. Meanwhile, Saul has returned. That was news to me. Wolfe hit the bell and Fritz showed him into the office 5 minutes later. Saul Panzer wore the same tired suit and permanent expression of someone who already knows the ending but is waiting to see if you'll catch up. Background checks, he said, and handed Wolfe a folder. Marsha Bowl once sued a restaurant for plagiarism. Dennis Lake has a side consultancy he hasn't disclosed to the board. Eamon Bells filed a trademark privately for a new brand, Muse Life. Guess who's not listed as a partner? Wolfe made a soft noise, the kind he usually reserved for burnt salt. And Tawny Glade, Saul continued, had drinks 2 nights ago with a venture capitalist who's been trying to poach Green Muse talent. No record of a formal meeting, but they left together. Where to? Her building. Wolfe leaned back. They are closing in, he said, tightening their circle, but not all together. Someone is orchestrating this, not for money but position, and they are willing to risk poison to stage their claim. I blinked. You think the food sabotage was a test? Worse, he said. A message, sent in the only language Olivia Van would never ignore. So what's the next move? Wolfe folded his hands. You will return to Green Muse tomorrow. Subtly, inform Miss Bell that Miss Van has received new information, and that she may soon convene a legal review. What's that supposed to do? If he panics, he's guilty, Wolfe said. If he smiles, he knows more than he should. Either way, he'll move. And then? Wolfe looked at me. Then, Archie, something else will vanish. A note. A file. A binder. The real betrayal always requires a second act. He was right. It always does. It's one thing to chase down facts in alleys and coffee bars. It's another to play psychological hopscotch with white-collar ambition. Wolfe had sent me to Green Muse with a verbal scalpel, a simple comment designed to unnerve Eamon Bell just enough to see what floated to the surface. So there I was again. Green Muse headquarters. Morning light streaming in through glass walls, the air thick with lemon zest and quiet hostility. I found Eamon in his office, sleeves rolled, collar open, fingers tapping a keyboard like he was trying to charm a cobra. Mr. Bell, I said, just stopping in to let you know Olivia's been in touch. She's revisiting the last few weeks with outside counsel, internal review, possible board brief, that sort of thing. His fingers stopped. She's lawyering up? Let's call it preemptive documentation. I watched him closely. Most people shift when something lands too close. He didn't blink, but his mouth tightened, and his fingers curled slightly off the keys. She's escalating, he said, almost to himself. No, I said, she's preparing. There's a difference. He nodded, but his eyes were somewhere else. His hands moved, almost automatically, organizing a few papers and snapping his laptop closed. Then he stood. Well, he said, thank you for the update. I'm sure everything will come to light. That was the wrong thing to say, because it meant he was already trying to push something out of the light. I left him with a smile and turned toward the test kitchen. I wasn't expecting to find anything physical. These people were too polished to leave actual footprints. But I knew how to read a room. That's when I ran into Rigo. He looked rattled. What's wrong? I asked. He looked around like someone might be filming him. Then he leaned in. Someone's been in the kitchen, he whispered. I raised an eyebrow. That's usually the point, isn't it? After hours, he said. I left my master binder, flavor logs, formulation notes, schedule slips in the side cabinet. Locked. This morning, it was unlocked. A section was gone. Just one. The May flavor index. Could you have misfiled it? No, he said sharply. That binder is sacred. I document every variation. Ingredient tweaks, texture notes, test feedback. It's all in there. Someone wanted something specific, and the May section. It covers the blends Olivia signed off on personally, including the one used in the investor tasting that went wrong. That sent a signal up my spine. The sabotage hadn't been about introducing something dangerous. It was about modifying something meaningful, a product she trusted, one that only a handful of people could tie directly to her. I made sure Rigo knew to keep his mouth shut about the binder, then left before anyone else spotted me snooping. Outside, I called Wolfe from a payphone. Yes, they still exist. Wolfe hates cell phones, claims the electromagnetic field interferes with his digestion. He picked up after 3 rings. Yes. Something's missing, I said. A binder from Rigo's locked cabinet. Only one section, May. It covered the formulas Olivia signed off on. Silence. Then the thief knew what to look for. Which means it wasn't casual sabotage. They're staging something. Or deleting a trail. Return. Immediately. I did. When I stepped into the office, Wolfe had already summoned Saul and was seated with a dictionary open. Not for vocabulary but for weight. He was pressing dried orchid specimens. The binder, he said. It confirms my suspicion. Whoever removed it wanted not only to hide an act, but to erase the record of the act. There is a difference. Saul nodded. We're dealing with someone who understands procedure. Indeed, Wolfe said. And who fears scrutiny enough to resort to theater. He closed the dictionary with a thud. Archie, he said, you will accompany Saul tonight. We must know if anything else has been compromised. Begin with Olivia's apartment. That raised my eyebrow. You think they'll target her personally? They already have, Wolfe said, through her palate. That is intimate sabotage. Someone is not trying to remove her. They are trying to undo her. Which is how Saul and I ended up at Olivia Van's apartment in Chelsea. That evening. Standing in a sleek condo where the wine rack had more square footage than my first studio. She met us at the door wearing a soft gray sweater and no makeup. She looked 10 years younger, and twice as tired. You think someone's been here, she asked. Let's find out, I said. We swept the place with quiet thoroughness. Saul handled the digital, the laptop, the Wi-Fi logs, the rota history. I handled the physical drawers, recipe cards, filing cabinets. In the bedroom closet I found something odd. A thin envelope on the floor behind a stack of shoes. It was unmarked, but empty. A faint outline remained. The impression of something once folded there. Not dust-covered. Recently touched. Miss Van, I called. You keep notes at home. Only personal ones, she said, entering the room. Why? This envelope recognized it. She took it, frowned, and then looked up sharply. There was a note in here. From Bennett. Before he collapsed. He didn't want to email it. Said someone might be watching. He wrote it out longhand and told me to keep it safe. Any idea what it said? She closed her eye. Just a phrase. Something he underlined twice. Inversion, not contamination. That's all I remember. I looked at Saul. He nodded slightly. That meant something. It meant the sabotage wasn't about adding something to the product. It was about replacing something without anyone noticing. We left her apartment with more questions than answers. But one thing was clear. The game was active. Someone had been inside her home. Someone knew exactly what Bennett had tried to whisper before he collapsed. Back at the brownstone, Wolfe listened. Hands folded like a sleeping inversion, he repeated. Yes. Not a toxin. A substitution. One compound removed. Another inserted. Molecularly similar. Sensorily adjacent. Would that show up in tests? Only to a trained specialist, Wolfe said. And only if they knew what had changed, and now the one man who could name it is in a coma. Precisely. Fritz entered just then with a small dish. I believe this is what you asked for, sir, he said. Wolfe took the dish and inhaled. Then he nodded. You see, Archie, this is a replica of Olivia Van's sabotaged salad. But I had Fritz prepare a second version with one inversion. I frowned. Which one? He handed me a fork. Taste. I did. It was good, clean, peppery. faintly sweet. Now the original. I tasted the second, almost identical. But this one's warmer, I said. Not in temperature, in feel, fuller. Exactly, Wolfe said. The first was stripped of a fat-soluble compound used to bind flavor layers. It was replaced with something plant-safe but emotionally inert. To Olivia's palate it was an insult. To ours it was a ghost. And to the right investor, I said, it's the difference between genius and generic. Which means, Wolfe said, that someone has already launched a duplicate, a new line, a theft of flavor, dressed as innovation. He looked at me then, eyes hard. We are not hunting a saboteur, Archie. We are hunting a forger. I was in the kitchen harassing Fritz about putting capers in the egg salad again, when Wolfe motioned for silence and took the receiver himself. Yes, he listened for 30 seconds, then understood. Report in person. Use the rear entrance. He hung up without another word and turned to me. It is confirmed. What is? Wolfe closed his eyes as if pained by the obviousness of the universe. The product exists. Someone has launched a parallel formulation identical in appearance, texture and branding, but void of the compound that distinguished Olivia Van's signature line. Saul located the filing, an LLC established 3 weeks ago under a shell name, Newslife. I straight Eamon Bell's side project. He owns the name, but the filing lists a proxy. We'll need proof to tie it back. But this is no longer about sabotage, Archie. This is strategic theft, intellectual culinary fraud, just what every salad needs a court case. Wolfe ignored me and rang for Fritz again. Bring Mr. Panzer to the office when he arrives. Then call Inspector Kramer, politely. Kramer? I asked. You want the law involved now? I want pressure, Wolfe said. And Kramer provides it like no other. Fritz ushered Saul in 10 minutes later. He looked unusually grim. He dropped a folder onto Wolfe's desk, open to a notarized contract, filed under a Nevada entity, managed by a Fieldstone trust, Saul said. But cross-reference the contact number. It traces back to Dennis Lake's private consultancy. Wolfe's lips thinned. Bell owns the name. Lake filed the paperwork. Who else? Saul tapped the folder again. The web domain for Newslife was registered by someone named G. Tawney. Personal Gmail address, Tawney Glade, I said. PR lead. Indeed, Wolfe murmured. So the triumvirate is complete. Still no Marcia? I asked. Not yet. But she may be useful for leverage. Wolfe reached for the phone. Get me Olivia Van. I listened as he explained coldly, efficiently what had been uncovered. There were no dramatics, no gasps. Just a silence at the other end of the line that lasted an uncomfortable 5 seconds. Then Olivia's voice, quiet and level. They gutted my work and sold the shell. Wolfe's eyes stayed shut. Yes. And they did it without ever leaving the kitchen. I want to confront them. You will not, Wolfe said. They would deny everything, and we lack admissible proof. But I intend to apply pressure in a manner they cannot ignore. Miss Goodwin will see to it. That's how I ended up 2 hours later, seated across from Marcia Ball at her favorite downtown cafe, where everything was locally sourced and too proud to be flavorful. I let her pick the wine and the chair. People like Marcia value perceived control. So I said, how loyal are you to your co-workers? She raised an eyebrow. Why? Because 3 of them are preparing to present a product you invented without your name on it. I slid the contract across the table. She read, then narrowed her eyes like she was tasting something foul. They're calling it Newslife. That's the brand. It launches in 6 weeks. It features a stripped-down version of your May profiles. No mouthfeel layer, no fat binder. She scoffed. It'll taste like a wet sock and still somehow get 5 stars from Bon Appetit. They're using your taste memory to cash in, I said. You're not even listed. That did it. She sat back, fingers tapping the stem of her glass. What do you want? Just an appearance, I said. This evening, Wolfe will hold a meeting. Be present. Say nothing until prompted. Just being in the room will be enough. She grinned. This your idea of justice? Mine? I said. No. But Wolfe's? Oh, absolutely. Back at the brownstone, the invitations went out. Wolfe dictated each one himself, formal, precise, unmistakable in tone. A review of interests regarding Green Muse's internal structure, held that evening at 6:30. Attendance mandatory. Tawny responded first. Of course, happy to clarify. Dennis followed, a bit sudden, but I can be there. Eamon sent a one-line email, looking forward to it. Rigo called me to ask if he should wear a tie. By 5:30 the brownstone was quieter than a thief's conscience. Wolfe had retreated upstairs to think in solitude, and I was left arranging the chairs in his office like setting traps in a maze. At precisely 6:30 they arrived. One by one, each suspect walking into Wolfe's office like it was a confessional with better lighting. I'd seated them deliberately, Eamon on the left, Dennis on the right, Tawny directly across, Olivia beside Wolfe, Rigo, Marcia, and Saul scattered behind, observers on the sidelines. Wolfe didn't speak immediately. He sat behind his desk, mountainous and unmoved, eyes closed, fingers tented like a cathedral of doubt. Then, without looking up, "Ladies, gentlemen, you are here because deception, once committed, rarely remains alone. It breeds further deception, then fraud, then rot." No one responded. "I have evidence," he continued, "that a proprietary product designed under Miss Van's direction has been copied, repackaged, and prepared for sale under a false flag." He opened his eyes. "And I know which of you are responsible." Eamon shifted first. "Miss Wolfe." "Be silent," Wolfe said softly. "You have already spoken through misdirection and theft." Tawny folded her arms. Dennis looked like he might pass out. Wolfe continued. "Miss Glade, your digital footprint is careless. Mr. Lake, your paper trail is clumsy. Miss Bell, your ambition is loud. Together you have conspired to erase Miss Van's role from her own creation." Tawny's mouth opened, closed. Wolfe turned to Marcia. "And Miss Bowl, whose palate you depended on, now sits beside you as witness. Her name was never included." "Why?" No one answered. "In your greed, you built a duplicate, but you lacked one essential ingredient." He pointed at Olivia. "Her." A silence descended that even I didn't want to break. Finally, Eamon cleared his throat. "This is a private matter," he said. "You have no legal standing." Wolfe allowed himself the faintest of smiles. "Correct. But I have visibility. Tomorrow morning, this matter will be delivered quietly to Inspector Kramer and to your board's ethics committee. Or if you prefer spectacle, we may arrange for the Times food column." Tawny stood. "We'll walk. We'll talk. No need for threats." "It is not a threat," Wolfe said, "but a judgment. Leave now. Speak with your counsel. You will return tomorrow at 10. If your intentions are contrite, Miss Van may allow you to remain in business." Dennis looked to Eamon, then at Wolfe, then back again. He didn't speak, but followed the others out the door. As the front door closed behind them, Wolfe let out a breath. "Fool," he muttered. I looked at him. "You think they'll fold?" "They already have," he said. "Miss Van." Olivia stood, eyes unreadable. "You've regained your company," Wolfe said, "but not your illusions." She gave him a faint, solemn nod. "Thank you. You're welcome. And now, please allow my house to return to silence." I was halfway through my coffee and pretending not to read the crime blotter when Wolfe rang the office bell. Not the one for Fritz. The other bell, the one reserved for urgency, cloaked in understatement. I went. Wolfe was seated behind his desk in fresh mustard-colored silk, looking like a Byzantine mural with an IQ of 9. "They will return," he said. "I didn't ask who. I already knew." Wolfe continued. "They believe this is still salvageable, that they can spin and dilute, offer concessions and preserve reputation. We must give them the opportunity to miscalculate. So the plan is to let them dig deeper." "Exactly. But we will give them a shovel of gold. You, Archie, will compose a memo from Miss Van, an internal email draft, a conciliatory tone, gratitude for their candor, openness to resolution, and willingness to explore shared vision. You want me to write a trap in corporate?" "Yes. Wrap the noose in mission statements." 10 minutes later I'd drafted it. Wolfe dictated the signature line himself. "In service of our collective purpose, Olivia." It had all the warmth of a Hallmark card dipped in litigation. Then we waited. At precisely 11:12, Fritz knocked. Miss Glade is here. Wolfe didn't react. Bring her in. Tawny entered like she'd rehearsed the walk. She wore a pale blue blouse, hair styled and a look meant to say reasonable, not rattled. She took the chair Wolfe indicated and crossed her legs. I've spoken with Dennis and Eamon, she said. There's a willingness to make to recognize Miss Van's contributions and restructure credit. Quietly. Of course, Wolfe said. Silence is your product. She smiled, though it didn't reach her eyes. There's no benefit to prolonged conflict. Indeed, Wolfe said. And what does that recognition entail? A joint ownership model, revised press materials, a retraction of MuseLife's pre-launch campaign, and the profits from the substitute product. She hesitated. Negotiable. Wolfe let the silence stretch long enough for it to bend. Then he leaned forward. Miss Glade, your partners intend to offer Miss Van a third of the product she created, diluted by betrayal and served with insincerity. You have stolen her vision and expect her to eat it politely. I wouldn't put it that way, she said coolly. No, Wolfe said. You would. That is the problem. She started to reply, but Wolfe cut her off. You may tell Mr. Bell and Mr. Lake that I expect them here at 4 o'clock. If they decline, Miss Van will proceed with her legal filings, and I will proceed with Inspector Kramer. Tawny opened her mouth again, but Wolfe had already closed his eyes, dismissed. She stood and left. I watched her go and turned to Wolfe. You think they'll come? They must, he said. Bell is too prideful to yield, but too strategic to burn the whole field. Lake will follow wherever the risk is lowest. Glade, she's already chosen preservation. And Marcia? She waits, like a cat in the high grass. She will side with whoever wins. I was about to say something snide about carnivorous collaboration when the doorbell rang again. This time, it was Saul. He entered with a smirk and a manila envelope. They blinked. He said, tossing the envelope onto Wolfe's desk. Signed agreement draft. The LLC dissolves. Olivia gets her share, and her name on the reformulated line. Wolfe raised an eyebrow. And they've scheduled a meeting with a board member tomorrow. Off the record, to streamline leadership structure. Translation, Dennis is going to be pushed out. And Bell, still maneuvering, trying to claim this was all a miscommunication, wants to stay on as creative director. Olivia hasn't agreed yet. Wolfe grunted. She shouldn't, he said. That man sells charm the way soap sells purity. He is unclean by design. At 4:00 as expected, Bell and Lake arrived together, in suits that smelled like last-minute laundering and expensive apology. Wolfe didn't rise, didn't offer coffee, just gestured to the 2 vacant chairs and began. Gentlemen, you are here because it suits you. Let us not pretend otherwise. Bell opened his mouth, but Wolfe's hand came up like a stoplight. You will listen. Bell shut his mouth. Lake just looked tired. You attempted a quiet coup. Wolfe continued. Not through force, but substitution. A theft disguised as taste. A product designed to mimic genius without the burden of honoring its source. Bell began. No, Wolfe said gently. There is no defense. Only aftermath. You will abandon MuseLife. You will retract all filings. You will issue a public joint statement, not of apology, but of attribution. You will resign any claim to formulations created under Miss Van's direction. Bell's nostrils flared. And what do we get? You get to keep your names off the police blotter, Wolfe said. And the press releases. Lake nodded slowly. That's acceptable. Wolfe looked at Bell. You? Bell met Wolfe's gaze. I was trying to save the brand. You were trying to own it, Wolfe said. Now you are merely trying to survive it. Do not confuse the two. Bell stood. If she wants me out completely, say so. Wolfe leaned back, eyes closed. I have said so. They left without shaking hands. Wolfe remained silent as the door clicked shut behind them. I waited. Then what now? Wolfe sighed. Now dinner. He stood with the solemn gravity of a man who had defeated 3 enemies and still preferred roasted duck to human conversation. That evening Olivia called. Wolfe took the phone in the office. I've reviewed the agreements, she said. They're pulling back. MuseLife will dissolve. My products are safe. Wolfe didn't reply immediately. You've won, Miss Van, he said at last. But remember, the most dangerous poisons are never ingested. They're inherited. She was silent. Then thank you, Mr. Wolfe. For everything. Wolfe placed the receiver down. Then called for Fritz. Roasted duck, he said. With blackberry compote. And a salad. Properly seasoned. I gave him a look. You sure you're ready for that salad? He opened his eyes and fixed me with a stare. I never left it. Inside the brownstone, things were heating up in more than one way. Wolfe had arranged the chairs in his office himself. Well arranged through me, while he pointed, grumbled and muttered about symmetry. That's how you knew he was nearing the end game. He got particular about furniture. At 10 Herod sharp, the suspects returned. Not as suspects now, but as guests of inevitability. Eamon Bell came in first. Face calm. Suit flawless. Charisma set to simmer. Dennis Lake followed. Less composed, clutching a folder like it might block incoming fire. Tawny Glade arrived last. Polished. And poised but clearly running the numbers behind her eyes. Marcia Bowl was already seated. She hadn't said a word since she arrived. Her presence alone was Wolfe's insurance policy. Wolfe nodded at me. I shut the door and took my usual post by the globe. Notebook ready. Saul Penza sat quietly behind the couch. Rigo stood stiffly near the bookshelves, jaw locked. Olivia Van, dressed in matte black and looking every inch a general at rest after battle, was already seated beside Wolfe. She didn't speak, but her stillness carried its own sharpness. Wolfe looked over the group as if assigning them footnotes in an unpleasant essay. Let us be clear, he began, that this is not a negotiation. It is a reckoning. Eamon exhaled softly through his nose. Dennis opened his mouth, thought better of it, and closed it again. Tawny's smile never moved, but the skin at her jaw tensed. You conspired, Wolfe said. Not for money, though that will follow, but for visibility, for control, for authorship. You found yourselves in proximity to brilliance, and convinced yourselves you could replicate it without consequence. He turned to Eamon. Mr. Bell, you provided the veneer, the charm, the face, but it was never yours to wear. Eamon didn't respond. He knew better. Wolfe shifted his gaze. Miss Glade, you shaped the narrative. You repackaged the theft. As strategy, you spun, twisted, and angled every decision toward deniability. You assumed elegance would excuse betrayal. Tawny finally spoke. We were trying to stabilize a brand. No, Wolfe said. You were trying to bury a woman's voice beneath your version of balance. But you failed to understand the integrity of palette, the signature that cannot be forged. He turned last to Dennis Lake. And you, sir, you buried the ledgers, filed the proxy, streamlined the deceit. You thought discretion would shield you, but you cannot make theft palatable by dressing it in spreadsheets. Lake's hand trembled slightly on his folder. We've signed the papers, he said. What more do you want? Wolfe closed his eyes and folded his hand. I want understanding. You will not leave this room believing you nearly succeeded. You will leave it knowing you failed completely, and that your failure was obvious. Olivia finally turned her head. You tempered with what defined me, she said quiet. Not to improve it, but to erase me from it. And for what? So you could build a second-rate version and call it vision. Eamon opened his mouth, but Wolfe cut in. You removed a compound, he said. Not because it was ineffective, but because only she knew how to balance it. You tried to turn that subtlety into simplicity. You built a counterfeit. No one would have known, Eamon said. A little too fast. But someone did, Wolfe said. Miss Van. There was silence. A deep, dense silence. Wolfe let it settle. Then softly, the most dangerous theft is not of a thing, but of meaning. Tawny spoke then, finally letting some fatigue show. We were going to give her credit, after, when the line launched, and in doing so, Wolfe said, you would have claimed authorship, and granted her relevance, when in truth, it was the inverse. He stood, slowly, deliberately. It was one of the few times Wolfe chose to rise in front of company. That meant he was putting on the last piece of the show. You will each sign a statement of record, he said. You will resign your claims to the product and dissolve MuseLife. You will issue a joint public statement naming Miss Van as sole originator of the Green Muse core blend, and inventor of the now infamous May profile. And the ball, Lake asked. You will tell them the truth, Wolfe said. You gambled and lost. And you are fortunate your adversary prefers restoration over vengeance. Olivia stood as well. If you do this, she said, I will not pursue further action. If you don't, this entire story hits the press and I hand Wolfe every internal memo, Slack thread and meeting summary I've saved. Eamon gave her a long look. There was something almost admiring in it. You would have made a terrifying chess master, he said. She smiled coldly. You should have played a different game. They left one by one, quieter than they'd come, with shoulders straighter but heads lower. No one offered a handshake. No one looked back. When the door finally closed, Wolfe sank into his chair like a victorious volcano. He didn't need to. I turned to Olivia. You still want to run a salad empire? She smiled faintly. Now more than ever. You going to keep the same team? Some of it, she said. The honest parts. Saul stood. You'll be all right. I already am, she said, and then turned to Wolfe. I know you don't usually take cases like this. Wolfe opened his eyes and regarded her. I took it, he said. Because someone desecrated flavor. That, Miss Van, is not a matter of commerce. It is a matter of character. She gave a short, respectful nod, then left with the calm confidence of someone who had finally, absolutely won. As soon as the door closed, Wolfe rang for Fritz. Roast beef sandwich, he said. Warm. With mustard. No arugula. No salad, I asked. Not tonight, Wolfe replied. There is only so much irony one can stomach in a day, I laughed. What now? Back to the orchids. Indeed, he said. Where no one lies and nothing aspires to profit. He leaned back, the master once again at peace in his kingdom of stillness and silence. I closed my notebook, stretched, and headed for the hallway, thinking that maybe, just maybe, we'd earned a quiet week. In the world of Nero Wolfe, victory doesn't come with parades or applause. It comes in layers, slow, strategic, and usually sandwiched between insult and digestion. The case was over. Mew's life was dust. Olivia Van had her empire back, and Wolfe, having dismantled the theft with all the grace of a master carver at a banquet, was returning to his orchids, which, unlike clients, didn't lie or leak olive oil on Persian rugs. But there was still the matter of why a trio of capable professional adults had gambled everything on a forgery that was always destined to unravel. Wolfe insisted we call it the closing of the circle. I called it the part where everyone finds out they were dumber than they thought. It began with Wolfe summoning Olivia for one final meeting. No suspects, no assistants, just her. She arrived late afternoon, dressed with less armor now, all clean lines and calm intent. She sat across from him, the same chair where she'd placed that salad bowl a lifetime ago. Wolfe regarded her as if inspecting a species of orchid, known to bloom only after legal arbitration. You have regained your place, he said, but I suspect you have not regained your understanding. She tilted her head. Understanding of what? Of why, Wolfe said. Why Bell, Lake and Glade conspired as they did. Why they believed they could clone your work without consequence. She said nothing. It was not merely ambition, Wolfe went on. Ambition does not explain the particular cruelty of the substitution. It was an attack tailored to you, intimate, surgical, aimed not at the product, but the you within it. Her gaze sharpened. You think this was personal? I think, Wolfe said, you underestimated the emotional consequences of being irreplaceable. He gestured slightly, and I brought out a folder, one Saul had compiled during the post-mortem phase. Inside was a collection of internal memos, Slack messages, and one particularly pointed email chain. Wolfe opened it, and read aloud, slowly. Olivia doesn't collaborate, she dominates. There's no room for growth while she's in the room. That was Dennis Lake. Next, she tastes everything like it's a test, and everyone's failing. Tawny Glade, and Bell, she can't scale herself, so the rest of us are stuck in her mouth. Olivia didn't flinch, but she folded her hands. They resented you, Wolfe said. Not because you were wrong, but because you were singular. Your palate was not just superior, it was unreachable. That terrified them, because it meant the brand would never be theirs, not true. So they sought to recreate it without the one ingredient they could never match, you. He paused, thus the inversion, not contamination. They didn't poison your salad. They emptied it, stripped it of nuance, left it soulless, a culinary facsimile, a polite middle finger disguised as reformulation. Olivia spoke, her voice measured. You think they wanted to prove they could live without me? No, Wolfe said. They wanted you to believe it. She sat, her shoulders eased, but it was the relaxation of someone who'd just confirmed her suspicions, not shed them. They failed, she said. Yes, Wolfe replied. Because you tasted the insult. You were never meant to eat it, and notice, that was their miscalculation. Wolfe leaned forward slightly. Allow me to illustrate. He rang for Fritz, who arrived 30 seconds later, carrying a tray with 2 covered plates. He placed them on the table between Wolfe and Olivia, and lifted the lids, 2 identical salads, at first glance. But Wolfe's face was solemn. One of these is your formulation, he said. The original, balanced, deep. The other is the version prepared by Bell and Lake, stripped of your binder, altered in finish, identical to most tongues, but not to yours. Olivia looked at the salads, then at Wolfe. You want me to choose? No, he said. You already did. The moment you tasted it in my office, you knew something had been stolen. That was your evidence, not lab reports, not contracts. Your palate exposed the betrayal. She didn't smile, exactly, but her lips curled slightly. Wolfe gestured to the salads again. That, he said, is why they could never succeed. They believed your skills could be approximated. The genius, Miss Van, does not dilute. She nodded slowly, then stood. Thank you, she said, for reminding me what was actually stolen, and what cannot be, Wolfe added. She left soon after, without ceremony, without parting words. But as the door closed, Wolfe made a low sound. Satisfaction, not smugness. I looked at him. That was a little dramatic, even for you. I have earned it, he said, and so has she. But why the whole production? He opened his eyes. Because clarity, Archie, must sometimes be staged. A woman whose identity was attacked through subtlety deserves to have it restored in full illumination. He gestured toward the salads untouched. Fritz may enjoy the leftovers. I took one last look at the twin salads, identical in composition, but not in essence, then followed Wolfe into the kitchen, for a civilized end to a very uncivil crime. He had just poured his beer when the phone rang again. I answered it in the office. It was Kramer. Tell Wolfe he won't have to testify, Kramer said. Bell folded, gave a statement. They're pulling the LLC and filing amendments on the trademarks. I've got the paperwork. Case closed. Thanks, Inspector. Also, Kramer added, tell your boss next time he smells crime in a salad. Maybe warn me before I almost subpoena a vinaigrette. I relayed the message. Wolfe snorted once. What, for him counted as laughter? That man needs a hobby, he muttered. Later that night, dinner was veal marsala, string beans and a bottle of 207, Morellino di Scansano. Wolfe was in rare spirits, by which I mean, he didn't complain about the sauce. As I cleared the plates, he made one final comment. Intelligence, he said, is not the ability to create. It is the restraint not to destroy what you envy. I leaned in the doorway. You think they'll try again? No, he said. They have tasted defeat. It lingered, and with that he lifted his glass, drank, and returned to the silence of the brownstone, the only place where truth is properly seasoned, and justice, like salad, is best served cold. The day after the dust settled, the brownstone was back to being what it was meant to be, quiet, controlled and 10 degrees warmer than it should have been, thanks to Wolfe's unshakable belief that orchids deserve tropical weather, and men should suffer in silence. No more client, no more clinking salad bowls or legal threats disguised as hors d'oeuvre, just Fritz's polished silver, Wolfe's pouting azaleas, and me, finally able to use a typewriter for something other than evidence logging. Even the air felt clean. At 11 Heaven sharp the mail arrived, a slim stack of envelopes, including a thank you card embossed with Olivia Van's name. Inside was a handwritten note, short and clear. We're moving forward. The board has affirmed my role. Belle has resigned to pursue personal projects. Dennis is gone. Tawny is repackaging herself elsewhere. I have offered Marcia a creative director role. She accepted. Rigo, of course, stays. We've named the new core product Palette #1. The binder is back, and so am I. Thank you both. Okay. Wolfe read it twice, then handed it to me without comment. I tucked it into the case file, which he insisted be labeled Van v Substitution. Culinary. In a world of blackmail, murder and theft, It was probably the first file we had with a grocery list in the appendix. You think she'll be all right? I asked. She will, Wolfe said, not looking up from his book, because she knows now. Knows what? That envy is not admiration misshaped. It is ambition untethered from merit, and she will no longer mistake one for the other. I let that one hang in the air for a moment. You could have just said yes. I did. Fritz brought in lunch at the stroke of noon. Cold roast chicken with tarragon, mustard, toasted sourdough, endive and watercress salad, seasoned properly this time. Wolfe sniffed it before lifting a fork, like a general inspecting a peace treaty. He took a bite, chewed, swallowed. Acceptable, he said. Coming from Wolfe, that's practically a love letter. We ate in silence for a while. Or, I should say, Wolfe ate in silence. I've never been particularly fond of eating without conversation. Call me old-fashioned, but I know better than to cross the line when he's chewing something that meets his standards. Interrupting a properly balanced meal in this house ranks just below arson. After lunch I went back to the office to tidy up the case log. A copy of the Muse Life filing Saul had dug up sat next to a final statement signed by all three saboteurs. Eamon Bell's signature was firm but small. Dennis Lake's was tight and formal. And Tawny Glade's looped like she'd been trying to add flourish to a confession. They'd folded, all of them. No fireworks, no sirens. Just paperwork, corporate embarrassment, and a quiet understanding that they'd tried to commit intellectual arson and got singed. And Wolfe, he never left his chair. He never lifted a finger, but he moved them all like pieces on one of those massive chessboards where the stakes aren't kings and pawns but reputation and reality. That night, Wolfe allowed one exception to the schedule: dessert in the office. A rare indulgence. Fritz brought up miniature almond tarts with orange glaze, and I brought in 2 glasses of port. We didn't toast. We didn't need to. But we ate them in a kind of mutual acknowledgement that this one, like a rare mushroom, had a distinctive aftertaste. It wasn't about money. I said, not really. No, Wolfe said. Money is vulgar. This was ambition gowned in sophistication, a far more dangerous thing. You think Bell really believed he could pull it off? Of course, Wolfe said. Men like Bell believe that charm and initiative are substitutes for talent. They are often rewarded for this belief. But in her case, he paused to sip. They collided with someone who is not merely capable but necessary. That is a kind of person the Bell types cannot abide. They mistake essentiality for obstruction. I finished my glass and set it down. You almost sound sympathetic. I am not, he said. But I recognize fear when it dresses up as strategy. I leaned back in the armchair and watched the port catch the lamplight. You ever worry someone will try to replace you? He turned his head slowly and gave me that withering look he usually reserves for undercooked eggs, or Inspector Kramer's sarcasm. No, he said. I have you. And orchids. Fair enough. The phone rang once around 9. Fritz answered and passed the message along. Olivia had held a quiet launch dinner. 6 guests. No press. No branding stunts. Just a tasting menu built around palette number 1. All had agreed it was remarkable. Balanced. Layered. Subtle and strong. I repeated that to Wolfe. He closed his eyes. Not in relief, but in satisfaction. Good, he said. That means she got the seasoning right. The brownstone returned to silence then. No more clients. No visitors. No subtle betrayals hidden in vinaigrette. Outside, New York hummed like it always does, fast, loud, always on the edge of reinvention. But in our corner of West 35th Street, time moved at Wolfe's pace, deliberate, composed and rooted in reason. The case of the salad that screamed ended not with a bang or a trial or a dramatic chase, but with a restored product line, an unspoken truce, and one very pleased palate. No one went to prison. No one pulled a knife. But something far more significant happened. Control returned. Justice, in the Wolfe sense of the word, had been served. As I reached for the light switch on the way out of the office, Wolfe spoke one last time. Archie. Yeah, next week. No clients involving kale. It makes people unhinged. I grinned. What about watercress? He didn't answer. Which from Wolfe is basically a yes. With the salad saga folded, filed and archived like a rare orchid leaflet, we were just shy of tranquil. I was in my shirt sleeves, considering the possibility of a weekend without corporate backstabbing disguised as recipe development, when Wolfe cleared his throat once. That sound in that room means one thing: he's ready to speak the truth no one else has earned the right to say. I dislike duplicity, Wolfe began, setting aside a volume of Seneca like it had interrupted him. But what I dislike more is cowardice, especially intellectual cowardice. Bell, Lake and Glade were not innovators. They were opportunists with good tailoring. He turned to me not to argue but to confirm the score. You observed them, he said, each capable, each clever, yet none of them alone or together could replicate what Miss Van achieves with a fork and her mind. I noticed, I said. Their version was polished, but it didn't hum. Precisely. It lacked conviction. She builds flavor the way some men build theology, not by committee. I raised an eyebrow. You're feeling poetic tonight. I am not, he said flatly. I am irritated. The culture now tolerates imitation under the guise of optimization. They replaced her not because they could, but because they couldn't stand that they could. He stood, a rare act, crossed to the window, watched the street like he was waiting for civilization to improve. They thought they could scale a person, he said. But people don't scale, not the ones who matter. There it was, the final clue, the heart of the crime. Not in what was done but why. They hadn't tried to sabotage Olivia because she was incompetent. They did it because she was necessary, because her taste, her insistence, her infuriating perfectionism made them feel small. So they shrank her, hoping no one would notice the size of the gap she left. But Wolfe noticed. Of course he did. Wolfe doesn't miss absence. It's the one thing louder than presence. She was the formula, Wolfe said, and they tried to extract her like a contaminant. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was the last ingredient. Motive as ego, crime as erasure. The phone rang. I picked it up. It was Olivia. Her voice was lighter now, still clipped, still calm, but no longer flint hard. The product's live, she said. The press is good, better than I expected. Bell keeping quiet. He's launching a podcast. I glanced at Wolfe. He's becoming a thought leader, I said. Wolfe groaned audibly. Olivia chuckled. I'm sending a thank you gift. Fritz will appreciate it. Tell Wolfe the salad is safe. I'll tell him, I said, but don't expect him to eat it. After I hung up, Wolfe returned to his chair and gave a faint grunt. She will do well, he said. And Bell will try again, and fail, because he will keep mistaking shine for substance. I nodded, then leaned forward. You ever think people like Olivia are their own worst enemy? No, Wolfe said. They are the enemies of mediocrity, which is why mediocrity always fights back. He reached for the bell. Fritz came in carrying beer, 2 glasses, perfectly chilled, and a tray of buttery, delicate cheese straws. Dinner? Wolfe asked. Lamb stew, Fritz said, with rosemary and pearl onions. Excellent. No salad. Fritz smiled. Not tonight, sir. Wolfe took a long sip of beer, then leaned back. Archie, he said, we are too tolerant of dullness. It is the only unforgivable sin. I toasted him. To seasoning, I said. To solitude, he replied. And with that we settled into our hard-earned peace, surrounded by orchids, logic, and the rich, warm certainty that nothing in this brownstone would ever be bland.